I came home from work and found a moving truck in my driveway, strangers carrying boxes through my front door, and my mother standing in my kitchen like she had buried me and inherited the walls. My brother was laughing in my living room, his fiancée was unpacking plates into my cabinets, and my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "Family comes first." He said that in a house with my name on every single document, every single bill, every single inch of stolen ground. I was 34 when my family tried to erase me from my own home. Not insult me, not guilt me, not borrow money again, not ask for one more favor they would never repay. Erase me. They tried to move my younger brother into my house while I was still at the office, then expected me to stand in the rain and accept it like I was the guest and they were the future. They forgot one thing. A daughter who builds her own life learns exactly where to keep the paperwork that can burn everyone else down. My name is Naomi. I bought my house 3 years before my family tried to steal it. It was a narrow 2-story house on a quiet street in Columbus, Ohio, with white trim dark shutters and a front porch just wide enough for 2 chairs and a pot of lavender. It was not huge. It was not fancy. It was not the kind of place people posted online and called a dream home. It was better than that. It was safe. I grew up in rented places that always smelled like somebody else. Other people's cooking in the hallways. Other people's arguments through the walls. Other people's scratches on the doors. My mother used to say a house was just a building, that family mattered more than property, that love was more important than ownership. What she really meant was that other people's property should always be available to family, especially if that property belonged to a daughter who had worked too hard to say no. I learned that lesson early. I was the oldest, the dependable one, the daughter who did well in school, kept schedules, paid bills on time, and remembered birthdays. My younger brother Caleb was the opposite in every way that our parents found charming. He was 31 and had spent more than a decade failing with confidence. He called it taking risks. My parents called it finding himself. Everybody else called it what it was, a man who floated from one unfinished life to another because someone always softened the landing. He tried real estate for 8 months, personal training for 6, then some online store that sold imported watches until he got locked out of his own payment account. After that, he spent a year telling people he was working on a brand, which mostly meant posting photos of coffee and sneakers while borrowing money from our parents. When I bought my house, Caleb congratulated me by asking if I had an extra room he could crash in if things got tight. That was the shape of our relationship in one sentence. My parents pretended to be proud of me when I bought the house. My mother cried at the closing because she always cried when a milestone happened in public, and she wanted witnesses to remember her face. My father nodded through the paperwork like he had somehow raised the down payment through wisdom and sacrifice, instead of giving most of his money to Caleb every time Caleb found a new way to fail. I let myself believe that owning my own place might change the family dynamic. I thought maybe walls and locks and mortgage statements would teach them where I ended and they began. I was wrong. The first year was good, quiet, peaceful. I painted the dining room a warm cream color and planted herbs in the little patch behind the kitchen. I replaced the old mailbox, bought decent knives, and learned how to fix a running toilet from an online video. I worked long days as a compliance analyst for a regional healthcare company, then came home to a place that felt like my own breath returning to my body. That peace did not last. Caleb got engaged. Her name was Brielle. She was beautiful in the polished way of women who treat every room like an audition. She always looked expensive, always smelled like sharp perfume and hair product, and always asked questions that sounded casual until you realized she was measuring your life for herself. How much did you put down on this house? What is the neighborhood worth now? Did you refinance when rates were lower? How big is the backyard? Do you have a second full bath? She asked all of that during her first visit. I noticed. I just did not understand yet how much I should notice. My mother adored her. My father liked that Brielle spoke about success as if saying the word often enough could produce it. Caleb strutted around beside her with the swollen little confidence of a man who had finally found a witness, willing to call his delusion ambition. At family dinners, the tone changed. My mother started talking about legacy. My father started talking about how hard it was for young couples to start out now. Caleb began complaining about rent prices more theatrically than before. Brielle touched his arm every time money came up, like she was already rehearsing the role of supportive wife in a story where everyone else funded the set. Then one Sunday, my mother brought it up directly. We were at my parents' apartment eating pot roast off the heavy plates that only appeared when my mother wanted the meal to feel more serious than it was. The air conditioner rattled in the window. My father had already poured himself a second drink, which meant he expected conflict but thought alcohol might make him sound profound. Caleb and Brielle had arrived late, smiling too hard. My mother folded her napkin and looked at me. "You know Caleb and Brielle need a real start," she said. I kept cutting my meat. "A real start," I repeated. "A proper home," my father said. "Something stable." Brielle gave me a soft, sad smile, the kind women practice when they want to appear gracious while asking for something indecent. "You have so much space, Naomi," she said. There it was. I put my fork down. "No," I said. Nobody had even asked yet, but I knew. My mother frowned. "Your first instinct does not always need to be selfish." "My first instinct is accurate," I said. "That is different." Caleb leaned back like he could not believe we were even discussing this. "You live alone in a whole house," he said. Brielle and I are trying to build a future. It is not forever, just until we get settled. In my house. It is family, my father said. It is my mortgage. My mother sighed the way she did when she wanted the room to believe she was exhausted by my unreasonable attachment to reality. You do not need all that room, she said. One woman in that house, it is wasteful. That sentence sat there for a second. I looked at her, then at my father, then at my brother. It was never just about helping Caleb. It was about correction. In their minds, a daughter living comfortably alone inside something she owned was a kind of insult. If she had too much, it should be redistributed to the son who deserved more chances. No, I said again. Caleb is not moving into my house. Brielle shifted in her chair. Caleb laughed like I was being difficult for sport. You act like we are asking for your kidneys, he said. No, I said. You are asking for my home. That is worse. Dinner ended badly. My father told me I had become cold. My mother said a woman without children should not be so obsessed with property. Caleb called me dramatic. Brielle said nothing, but the expression on her face told me she had already started imagining a different plan. For the next few weeks, my phone turned into a weapon. My mother sent long messages about sacrifice. My father left short voicemails that sounded like orders pretending to be advice. Caleb switched between guilt and mockery. Brielle remained silent, which was somehow more unsettling than all the rest. Then the pressure stopped. That should have frightened me more than it did. The week everything happened, I was closing an internal audit that had eaten most of my life for 12 days straight. Long hours, bad coffee, frozen shoulders, spreadsheets that refused to balance until the last possible second. By Friday, I was exhausted, but relieved. I planned to leave the office, stop for takeout, shower, and spend the night under a blanket pretending the rest of the world had never been invented. It was late March. Cold rain. The kind that turns roads black and shiny and makes every traffic light look like it is dissolving. When I turned onto my street, I saw the truck. At first, I thought it belonged to a neighbor. Then I saw the ramp down in my driveway. Men carrying boxes through my front door. My porch light on. The door wide open. I stopped in the middle of the street for one full second because my brain would not accept what my eyes were telling it. Then I parked at the curb and got out. Rain hit me hard enough to sting. My heels sank into the grass as I crossed the yard. There was a woman with a clipboard on the porch wearing a company jacket and speaking into a headset. I did not stop. Excuse me, she said. What are you doing at my house? I said. She blinked and checked her clipboard. Move in for Mr. and Mrs. Caleb Mercer, she said. Access confirmed by family representative. I walked past her. The hallway smelled like wet cardboard and furniture polish. My umbrella stand had been moved. My framed print from the entry wall was leaning against the stairs. In the living room, Caleb stood beside my sofa, telling two movers where to place a coffee table I had never seen before. Brielle was in my kitchen, opening boxes, marked dishes. My mother was wiping down my counters with a sponge. My father stood near the fireplace, hands on hips, surveying everything with smug ownership. Nobody noticed me for half a second. Then Caleb turned and grinned. There she is, he said. We were going to call you once things were in place. Get out, I said. My voice cut through the room so sharply that even the movers stopped. My mother straightened first. Naomi, calm down. Get out of my house. Brielle pressed a hand to her chest. Do not make a scene. A scene. In my own kitchen. My father started toward me, shoulders forward, chin down, that old posture of male authority he had used all my life when he thought volume and size should settle an argument. This is happening, he said. Do not embarrass everyone. By whose authority? Mine, my mother said. I turned to look at her. She was standing by my sink holding one of my coffee mugs. You do not have authority here, I said. Family has authority, she said. We are trying to do what is right. For who? For Caleb, my father snapped. He is starting a family. That was when I noticed Brielle touching her stomach with careful little movements, a gesture designed to be seen. A cold feeling slid down my spine. You are not pregnant, I said. Her face changed for 1 second. Just one. But I saw it. Caleb stepped in quickly. That is not your business. Neither is my house, I said. Yet here you all are. My mother crossed her arms. One woman does not need this whole place. There are sentences that split your life into before and after. That was one of them. It was so naked, so honest in its cruelty, that something inside me stopped hoping any of this was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. There was only entitlement, with wet shoes standing on my hardwood floor. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. What are you doing? My father said. Recording. Since none of you seem able to tell the truth without witnesses, I held the camera up and spoke clearly. This is my property. None of you have permission to be here. I am instructing every person in this house to leave immediately. You are being recorded. My mother gasped like I had struck her. Caleb swore under his breath. Brielle stepped back from the counter. My father pointed at the phone. Put that away. No. Caleb spread his hands in fake reason. Naomi, Do not do this. We are family. I laughed once. Harsh, tired, done. You brought a moving truck into my driveway while I was at work, I said. Family was over 3 rooms ago. The woman with the clipboard had edged into the hallway. She looked nervous now. Sir, ma'am, if there is a dispute over ownership, company policy requires us to pause until it is resolved. There is no dispute, my mother said. There is now, I said. Then I looked at my father, whose name is on the deed. No one answered. That silence told me more than anything else could have. I went straight back outside, opened my trunk, and took out the black document case I kept there when I had anything work-related to finish at home. It also held copies of my mortgage papers, homeowner policy, tax records, and the deed abstract from when I closed. I had never planned for that habit to save me, but there it was. When I came back inside, my father looked irritated, not surprised. That told me something too. He knew what those papers were. He had already thought about the deed. He had already planned around it. I spread the documents across my kitchen island. Every utility bill, my mortgage statement, my tax bill, my homeowner policy, the deed copy, all in my name. Brielle took her hand off her stomach. Caleb stared at the papers, then at my parents. My mother recovered first. Paperwork can change. Not without me, I said. The room went quiet except for the rain hitting the windows. I turned to my father. Did you change any locks? Too quick, he said. No. Too flat, too defensive, too immediate. I looked toward the back hall. The mudroom door had a new brass lock set. Different finish. Different shape. My stomach clenched. You did, I said. My father did not answer. That was when I called the police. Non-emergency first, because the dispatcher asked if there was violence, and there was not, at least not the kind the law names first. I reported active trespassing, unauthorized entry, and a suspected illegal lock change at my residence. Then I called Sonia Patel, the attorney who had handled my refinance the year before. Sonia was 5 feet tall, terrifyingly calm, and loved facts more than almost any human being I had ever met. I told her what happened in less than a minute. She asked one question. Are they still inside? Yes. Good, she said. Do nothing and let them stay visible. I am on my way. Then she hung up. My mother tried to keep performing outrage, but the room was changing shape around her. Once police and lawyers enter a family fantasy, emotions stop mattering as much as documentation. People like my parents hate that. They survive on pressure, guilt, private history, old hierarchy. They wilt under paperwork. The officers arrived in about 20 minutes. Long enough for everyone to get wetter, angrier, and quieter. The movers stood outside under the truck, awning smoking and avoiding eye contact. Caleb paced. Brielle cried without smudging her makeup, which almost impressed me. My father stood rigid by the fireplace. My mother kept muttering about disrespect. When the officers came in, I handed them my identification and every relevant document in order. I showed them the video of me revoking permission and ordering everyone out. My mother tried to explain that this was a family misunderstanding. My father said there had been a verbal arrangement. Caleb said I had promised to help, which was a lie so stupid even he looked embarrassed while saying it. One officer, a woman with tired eyes and a voice like sandpaper, asked the only question that mattered. Does anyone here, other than the homeowner, have a lease written permission mail at this address or any legal document granting residency? Silence. The other officer glanced at the boxes, the moved furniture, the open cabinets, the rain on my clothes. Then he said what I had been waiting to hear. Everyone except the homeowner needs to start removing personal property and leave the premises. My mother actually stepped forward like she might argue the law out of existing. This is family, she said. The officer looked at her. This is trespassing. I will remember that line for the rest of my life. What followed was ugly, exhausting, and more satisfying than I could admit out loud. Caleb carried his own boxes back into the rain. Brielle cried harder now that tears no longer had strategic value. My father barked at movers, then fell silent when one of the officers told him to lower his voice. My mother kept saying, "You cannot do this to us," as if I had set the whole evening in motion instead of simply returning home. And then Sonia arrived. She walked in wearing a dark coat, carrying a slim leather portfolio, her hair still pinned perfectly in spite of the rain. She took one look at the scene and became even more polite, which is how I always knew someone else was about to have a terrible night. She introduced herself, reviewed my paperwork, and asked the officers if she could photograph the lock on the mudroom door. She asked the moving company supervisor for the work order. She asked who had provided access. Then she asked the question that cracked everything open. Who hired the locksmith who changed the back door yesterday? My head turned so fast my neck hurt. Yesterday. The supervisor hesitated, then pointed at my father. He said that gentleman met the locksmith and identified himself as the homeowner's father. For one long second, nobody moved. Then the room shifted. It was no longer just about trespassing or pressure or family manipulation. It was about action, planning, false representation, unauthorized access. My father had not just gone along with an ugly idea. He had physically changed the conditions of my home while I was at work and expected me to submit after the fact. That mattered. The officers separated people and asked a few more questions. My father began a sentence 3 times and finished none of them. My mother said he was helping family. Sonia asked if he had any written authorization from the owner. He did not. Caleb looked sick. Brielle stared at him like she was discovering for the first time that confidence and competence were not the same thing. Within an hour, the truck was reloaded, the house was cleared, and the officers told my family to leave. The moving company supervisor said their legal department would be following up about the unauthorized access and false representation used to initiate the move. Sonia collected names, times, card numbers, and incident references like a woman picking roses from a garden. As my family stood in the doorway preparing to leave, my mother turned back to me with wet hair stuck to her face and fury sharpening every word. "One day you will regret choosing walls over blood," she said. I looked at the rain outside, then at the house around me, then at her. "No," I said. "I regret confusing blood with loyalty." Then I shut the door. The silence afterward was so sudden it made my ears ring. I stood in my hallway and looked around. Wet footprints on the floor, cabinet doors open, my rug crooked. Boxes of someone else's dishes gone. The air smelled like rain, cardboard, and trespass. Then I saw a sign leaning against the wall near the kitchen, white script on pale wood. "Welcome home." My throat tightened so hard it hurt. They had planned this like an event. Not a desperate move. Not a spontaneous fight. A ceremony. A replacement. A smiling little occupation designed to make me walk in and understand that the story had already moved on without me. I took the sign, walked outside, and threw it straight into the trash bin by the curb. Then I came back in and locked the front door. That night I did not sleep much. Sonia sent a formal notice before midnight, demanding that my parents, Caleb and Brielle, preserve all communications related to the attempted move, cease contact about my property, and make no further access attempts. She also told me to change every lock, every code, every password, even remotely tied to the house. I spent the next day turning panic into administration. New locks on every exterior door. Security cameras at the porch, driveway, back gate, and mudroom. New garage code. New alarm passcode. Mail monitoring. Credit freeze. Written notice to my mortgage servicer, insurance company, and county recorder that no changes were authorized without direct verification through counsel. Sonia loved that part. She said people like my family depended on informal pressure and social engineering. The fastest way to kill their leverage was to force everything through documented channels. By afternoon, I was exhausted, furious, and strangely clear. Then Sonia called with the part that made me sit down on my kitchen floor. "Your father contacted the title company last week," she said. "He asked what would be required to add a family member after a marriage and expected child. He also asked whether a quitclaim deed could be prepared the same day, if the owner was unavailable." I stared at the cabinet doors in front of me. "He was trying to transfer the house," I said. "He was trying to create the appearance that transfer was normal," Sonia said. "That is how people like this operate. They do not just steal. They pre-write the story so you look unreasonable for resisting." That was exactly what they had done. The truck, the lock change, the welcome sign, the fake pregnancy pose, the timing, while I was still at work, the calm assumption that once furniture crossed the threshold, I would be too shocked, too embarrassed, too conditioned by family guilt. Stop them. They did not know me as well as they thought. For 2 weeks, my phone lit up with blocked calls and messages I did not answer. Caleb sent a text saying I had humiliated him in front of his future wife. Brielle finally wrote to tell me that bitter women always die alone. My mother left a voicemail saying I had broken my father's heart. My father sent one email, only one, saying he would not apologize for trying to keep assets within the family. I forwarded everything to Sonia. Then Brielle made a mistake. She posted online. Nothing explicit. Just the kind of vague, dramatic garbage people post when they want sympathy without facts. She wrote about toxic women attacking young couples for wanting stability. She posted a photo of herself in front of a model home with one hand on her stomach and a caption about protecting your future from jealous people. A former coworker of hers sent me screenshots within a day. In one older thread, Brielle had joked with friends about using a pregnancy scare to force commitment from Caleb. Another person messaged me privately to say Brielle had been drinking heavily at a bar the week after the move-in attempt. I did not need the moral victory. I already had the house, but I sent everything to Sonia anyway because lies multiply when they survive unchallenged. A week later, Caleb and Brielle split. Apparently, fake motherhood failed, property theft and public embarrassment were not the foundation of lasting romance. Caleb moved back into my parents' apartment. I heard about it through my Aunt Teresa, who had the gift of delivering gossip with the solemnity of breaking news. She told me the apartment walls were thin and the screaming was constant. My mother blamed Brielle. My father blamed me. Caleb blamed everyone. That was predictable. What mattered to me was this. They were not in my house. The moving company pursued reimbursement from my father for false access and rescheduling costs. The locksmith cooperated with a statement after learning he had rekeyed a residence at the request of someone who did not own it. The title company documented the inquiry from my father and notified Sonia directly of any further contact. Institutions were suddenly involved, and institutions do not care that someone is your parent. They care about authorization, identity, signatures, liability. My family had built its power on private shame. Paperwork destroyed that. A month later, my mother appeared in the lobby of my office. She had not called ahead. She never did when she wanted a performance advantage. She was dressed carefully, soft beige coat, tasteful scarf, the costume of a woman hoping strangers would assume dignity where there was none. I met her downstairs because I refused to let her upstairs. We sat across from each other in the building lobby while people passed us carrying coffee and laptop bags. She folded her hands. "You won," she said. I looked at her. "This is not a game. Everything is a game to you now," she said. "Lawyers, cameras, papers. You used to have a heart." That line would have hurt me years earlier. Women are trained to hear heart as praise and boundaries as cruelty. But standing in my own kitchen while my family tried to replace me had burned that weakness out of me. "No," I said. "I used to have guilt. That is not the same thing." Her mouth tightened. "You chose a house over your brother." "No," I said. "I chose myself over people who would have put me out in the rain." She stared at me in silence. Then she tried one last knife. "When your father is gone and I am gone, you will wish you had family." I stood up. "When you are gone," I said, "I will still have my keys." That was the last private conversation I ever had with her. The first holiday season after the attempted takeover was quiet. I spent Thanksgiving with Aunt Teresa, and Christmas alone by choice. I roasted chicken, lit candles, and sat by my living room window while snow fell over the street. The house felt different after that night. Not lighter exactly. Stronger, like a body that had survived illness and remembered every symptom. In January, I turned the spare bedroom into a library and office. Floor-to-ceiling shelves. A deep green chair. Soft lamplight. Thick curtains. No guest bed. No temporary space for family emergencies. No room set aside for other people's need. My home had spent too long being treated like a public resource. I corrected that. Spring came early that year. The lavender on the porch survived the winter. Tiny yellow flowers pushed up near the walkway. One Saturday morning, I sat outside with coffee and listened to the neighborhood wake up. A dog barking 2 houses down. A screen door somewhere. Wind moving through the bare trees. My phone buzzed once. A text from Caleb. "You really burned this family down over a house." I looked at the porch rail beneath my hand, the front steps. I had scrubbed the lawn I had mowed, the door I had locked, unlocked, painted, defended. Then I typed back. "No. You burned it down trying to steal my home. I just refused to stand outside and watch." I blocked his number after that. That is the part people do not understand when they hear stories like mine. They think the revenge was calling the police, hiring the lawyer, making them carry their boxes back into the rain. Those things were satisfying, yes. But they were not the deepest part. The deepest revenge was this. My father changed a lock and still did not get in. My mother kept a spare key and still lost access forever. My brother brought a moving truck and left with nothing. The woman who tried to replace me never even learned where I kept the good dishes. And I still wake up in the only place any of them ever really wanted, the house they thought they could take because they spent my whole life teaching me to surrender. Every morning, I walk downstairs, touch the kitchen counter, unlock my own front door, and step onto my porch, knowing the ground beneath me is mine, because I paid for it, protected it, and refused to hand it over to people who called theft, family, and obedience love. So no, I did not choose walls over blood. I chose truth over entitlement. I chose safety over guilt. I chose the daughter they thought they had trained out of me. And when the rain came down that night, when my family stood in my doorway acting like I was already gone, they learned the lesson they should have understood the first time I signed those closing papers. A house is not just wood and nails. Sometimes it is the one place in the world where a woman can finally lock the door on everyone who ever mistook her kindness for permission.